I'd probably say I had 3-4 years where I just lost a lot of my actual voice, a lot of my discipline. It's easy to just think, right, next week I'm just gonna start fresh, which I did so many times, like within that 4-year period. I've never really been someone who's struggled with having energy for things. For example, I was showing up to the gym during that time, but this is why I talk so much how our goals are so much deeper than the things that we're doing just like on the external world. We can still show up to work. For example, I showed up every single day to work, to the gym within those 4 years, but I don't feel like I was fully present, and I kind of had this constant lingering feeling like everything was just a little bit out of alignment. You might have these bouts where you're really disciplined, you're on it, but then something kind of comes up. You have a weekend away, you have a hungover Sunday, and you don't quite make it to the gym on the Monday. You have got to romanticize the process. If you're only ever focused on the end goal, you're missing out on all the magic. And not only that, that is also why you're constantly in this circle of being stuck, never really moving forward, or maybe for 1 week. In this video, I'm going to take you through the 7 steps, how to stop making excuses, keep consistent discipline, how you can find your own flow, which is really unique to you, and how to keep it consistently, and also be able to show up before 2025 with some real good rooted habits, things that are actually in alignment with you as a person and the bigger picture, so they're not just surface level things. Okay, let's get into the first step. I think it's the most important, which I don't usually say. Do the hard thing first. 95% of the time, it's not as hard as we actually think. I feel like we create things and we procrastinate so much. Do you know what? It's like part of our genetic makeup. Like, we want to stay comfortable, and our brain wants to keep us in the safe, in the secure, and in the comfortable, what it knows. It doesn't want to stretch. And you've constantly got to remind yourself that, like, in order to keep kind of growing, to keep things progressing, you need to be getting uncomfortable. Sometimes I think we can forget when we want these big goals, you've got the goal and it's like very glamorous in your mind and you can see it and you're like, oh, that would be really nice. But you forget that in order to get to this amazing thing, there's so much grit, there's so much training. And also just remembering half the time, when you actually get going with said thing, said hard thing, it's not actually as bad when you actually get going. It's just the thought of it. So doing the hard thing first, like, you know that saying, swallow the frog, it then ripples out. Like, I think the minute you start doing like one hard thing, then you're like, oh, actually, I'll just get that done. And it kind of goes from there. When you're trying to get into a more disciplined headspace, it can feel like, oh my God, this is very restrictive, as in I feel too structured. But it's also looking at discipline as freedom too, because you have more control over your choices and it's rippling out into other areas. I couldn't maintain like a consistent gym routine, but it then meant I was like not showing up properly at work, or I couldn't organize myself. And I just think everything is so connected, like every aspect of our work life, our personal life, our health, fitness. When you can master one area, it can help ripple into other areas. Like, I feel like I've managed to get further in my business because I've had a better morning routine, because I've had a better gym routine, if that makes sense. Second step is your environment, which is so important. Are you putting yourself in places that you just know you don't feel good in, you're not comfortable? Picking a gym is one that I kind of overlooked. So I was going to this gym that was convenient, it was close by, but it didn't really have all the equipment I needed. I never really felt inspired there. It was super busy. I could never get on any machines, and I could have just driven an extra 10 minutes a day, gone to a much better gym, but I kind of just settled. And it wasn't just the gym, but I was settling for so many other things. Like, it was where I was choosing to live at the time, what people I was around, and I feel like this is what I'm getting at. The minute that you're settling in one area, you're kind of settling across the board, and then before you know it, you're feeling so lost and you're thinking, how have I ended up here? When you start ignoring in one area, it can just kind of like ripple out. You could be living in an apartment or in a house situation, and you could spend an extra, I don't know, not much more to live somewhere which would be closer to your work, or you would feel happier, or a better area. You're not justifying that expense. However, you're getting a coffee every day. When you add that all up, like, you could just pay a little bit more and live somewhere nicer, more aligned. So it is just like looking at your environment, because I really think environment is super important. It's where we spend most of our time. I could not recommend having nudges and visual reminders like in as many places. And I'm not talking about the live, laugh, love ones, but ones that you actually really connect with. So this year, what I've loved doing is having my my vision board printed off. So I've always been someone, I love a vision board on my phone screensaver and my laptop screensaver, but I've never really had it visually printed. And it's been so powerful because every day I've seen what it is I'm going after, and I didn't keep myself small with my vision board this year. Like, I put up some pretty wild stuff, as in things that I thought, bloody hell, Olivia, like, that's a bit out there. And that is exactly what you should have, because whatever we put our mind to, we can achieve. You don't need to limit yourself. Don't let other people's limits as well. Like, I feel like this has been the year where I've seen other people say to me like, oh, that's not realistic, Olivia. Maybe it's not realistic in someone else's world, but it's realistic in mine, and you need to keep hold of that. Don't let other people's limits come into your mind, because you're powerful beyond measure. And another thing is having things like on your coffee table an inspiring book. So this was the loveliest present that I got from one of my flowy girls at the meetup about a month ago. Oh, it's got such a beautiful, she wrote a message in it, and it's basically, it's kind of like the Daily, I don't know if you've heard of the Daily Stoic. It's a book, obviously you could read the whole thing, but it's also a book that you can just literally open it on a page, and this one is about pessimism. One that I opened this morning was about vulnerability and how important it is to be vulnerable, to kind of admit your flaws and not try and be this like perfect version of ourselves that doesn't really exist. It was one of the nicest things. Like, I feel like when you start your day with something positive and optimistic, it's just uplifting, isn't it? Third thing is romanticizing the process and actually enjoying the journey. If we're always fixated on this end goal but don't really enjoy the day-to-day, it's going to be so hard and almost impossible to get to that end point. You need to find ways to enjoy the process, and there are so many ways. Think about things like, right, how can I make this easier for myself? And I actually think the journey, and when you can get yourself into that flow state where things are fun and enjoyable, is where you'll see a lot more growth. So that could be just mixing up what you're listening to in the gym. If you're not really feeling like music, can you put on a podcast? Can you find someone that you just like listening to in the background? It doesn't have to be a self-help podcast. It could just be something fun and light-hearted. Just looking at different ways to like, right, how can I make this something that I can keep it consistent and actually enjoy the process? We need to go through the processes of getting things wrong with our training routines and not being consistent for a while, to then be able to be consistent, to know what works for us, to try lots of different things, and eventually just kind of get into a flow and process that we can actually enjoy. If you're looking to take things a step further, I have something exciting. I'm launching Defining a Line, which is my brand new 4-week program focused on body recomposition. So I've designed this to help you build lean muscle and define your shape while staying at maintenance, so you can actually achieve visible progress without the stress of a deep calorie deficit. Think of it as the perfect in-between to keep you on track during this holiday season, and also to set you up for an even bigger push in January. So if you are ready to redefine and realign with your fitness goals, join us on November the 25th. Links to sign up are below, and I can't wait to see you there. A big one is shifting mentality from I have to I get to. Sometimes, you know, you catch yourself and you're like, oh God, I can't be bothered to train today. Like, I get to train today. Like, my body's healthy enough. Like, how annoying is it when you get an injury? I remember when I had ankle injury 2 weeks before I had a run event, and it just wasn't recovering quick enough, and I was so frustrated. So I always try and just remind myself of like how grateful to be for our health. And I know that can sound cliche, but is something that we take for granted and shouldn't ever be something we take for granted. Like, what a blessing to be able to move our bodies and to have the choice to do that as well. Creating moments of appreciation as well. This has gone such a long way. So whether you're doing your journaling and your meditation in the morning, lighting a candle. Like, I love creating a nice vibe. And if you're into your scents, you're into how certain things make you feel, wearing like your certain pajamas, rather than just making everything like a chore, make the smaller moments something that you can actually look forward to, and that you kind of like resonate with something else that's quite nice. Treating yourself on a certain day to a coffee on the way to work, like just little things, and just turning the process into something that you can look forward to. Fourth thing is handling projections and judgment. This is something that is probably one of the most challenging aspects. And again, I feel like when you are trying to work on yourself, trying to evolve, it's easy to just want to shut yourself off from any form of toxicity, which yeah, you can sit in your house, but for how long? The only way you're going to be able to learn how to set boundaries isn't by locking yourself away from all humans, but by being in rooms and spaces where you assert yourself and speak your truth. And I always think when you start making positive changes, and especially big changes over time, and people obviously aren't used to maybe this new version of yourself or this version of you that's slightly different and is changing and evolving, and they're possibly not at that point, they can almost kind of get a little bit triggered by you changing. People will project their reality, and if they're not doing the work, like they're going to try and kind of sometimes what feels like drag you down. It might not be intentional. You've got a totally different outlook on life, different experiences, and you're going different places as well, and that's okay. And knowing that like people will have different thoughts, different opinions, but not taking them on as your own. I feel like I spent too long, so long, just allowing other people's opinions to doubt mine and taint my view, when we all have different paths and we all have different opportunities, different mindsets. And I've found this a lot in fitness and with nutrition as well. Not everyone's into fitness and nutrition, and you could be making certain choices, or like you're going to get an earlier night because you want to get up early and go for a run, say if you're like away with friends on holiday, or could even be when you eat out, you maybe ask for a side salad instead of fries or something along those lines, and you will see other people say, why are you doing that? Or like they'll question things, and that is fine. And it's being comfortable with that and knowing that that will come up. I feel like this was something that I wasn't very prepared for. When I started changing, I was kind of like, I'm quite comfortable in what I'm doing, but I didn't think about other people really do have certain things to say if they're not on that path as well. I think alcohol is a big one. I haven't stopped drinking totally, but I haven't been drinking this past few months, and wow, like when I've gone out with certain people, I've really noticed like it's almost felt like it's been a problem, like me not drinking, which has really made me look at alcohol and just how, why is a choice that I'm making like makes someone else uncomfortable when it's like me living my life. Don't give in to someone else's projections. It's their path. At the end of the day, the only approval you need is your approval, and you don't need to be seeking approval from outside of yourself. The fifth point is your inner compass and self-guidance over external validation. So if you have also been a people pleaser, like this was a big one, and it's taken, oh my gosh, like it's something that I'm still continuously working on. I feel like I was a people pleaser for so long, and this goes right back to when I was super young, and it's been something that I've had to really work on continuously reminding myself, which is not looking outside of yourself for approval. So you know when you go and ask like, oh, does my hair look good today? Ask yourself first. Sounds really simple, but it stopped me in my tracks so many times, and I quickly realized how much, wow, I go and ask friends, or like if it's posting a picture on Instagram, how many friends have you sent that picture to for approval? You know, and you should be coming as much as possible from your compass, and I feel like that affects your confidence. The more that you're asking outside of yourself continuously without realizing, it's actually damaging your confidence because you're not feeling to your voice, and it then becomes difficult to actually understand like what do you want, what goals are you working towards, and could also be why you could be struggling with that clarity on like getting to your why and your deeper meaning, and not comparing to anyone else. This has changed my life this year, and I can say that wholeheartedly. Like I started creating before I consume, so every day I make sure I've created something, and it doesn't even mean to be like actually creating a piece of content or like something physical, but just have I read, have I done something for myself, have I gone and got a workout in before I'm consuming other people's lives, other people's energy, other people's everything, and I haven't done anything for myself yet. When you just focus on your own lane, on what like you're doing that day, your life gets so tenfold better and opens up in ways you can't imagine, because you're not comparing, and we all know that comparison is the thief of joy. What is the point comparing your step 1 to someone else's step 1000? When I started my business a few years ago, I found this so hard because I'd be comparing to someone on step 5000, and I was like, how have they got from A to B? And they would have big teams in place. I'm like, how do you even get a team for one? Like, where do you even start? How do you go from A to B, rather than, I can see how you can go from A to Z, but this bit in between just feels impossible. So it's really important to just be in your life, be in your lane, like you're on your path. It's so pointless like trying to replicate what anyone else has done as well on that sense. Obviously taking inspiration, but I think the minute that you get that negative feeling is the minute that you're losing your power and your kind of spark. And I feel like our spark comes from when wearing like our uniqueness and doing our own thing. And I think when you find your uniqueness as well, you notice other people start like imitating you, or like I've seen this pattern in my life a few times. I used to get really insecure about that. I'd get annoyed if I saw someone copying me. There really is enough for all of us, and we don't need to be so like clinging on to thinking there is only so much and someone's going to take away from our light. Like there really is enough for all of us. There's enough money, there's enough success. We all bring something unique to the table because we've all had totally different life experiences, totally different upbringings, totally different traumas, totally different struggles, totally different money dials, relationships. And I think the more you can hone into what makes you you, the happier, or I've noticed the happier I've been when I'm just more myself. Sixth thing is the power of perspective and reframing challenges. Saw this quote the other day: there will always be challenges, so it's essential to find joy in life while solving them. It is not about eliminating problems, but thriving despite them. Oh, I just flipping love that. When you see obstacles as opportunity, any situation can become valuable for growth. But this is something that I feel like you'll be able to do literally in this moment. Just looking at a situation and just thinking, how can I reframe this actually? Like, is this actually the biggest blessing, even though it feels maybe painful right this second? This year has been the year I've realised how we're all the same and we can be in totally different career paths. Like I went for a stage where I was thinking, oh my God, have I chosen a real hard path, like working for myself, having my own business? I've chosen a path where I'm working 24/7. I feel like I don't get a holiday ever, and say, I can't remember last time I've taken like a proper day off. But then your best friend will ring you who's got a 9 to 5 and they're struggling with something totally different, but it's exactly the same struggle. And I find this with my brother. He has got his own business, but it's in a totally different genre, totally different avenue, different field to me. And he's got the same struggle, but it's so different, and it just blows my mind how we're all just living in the same life. It feels like choosing your hard is so important, and just making sure that you're picking the right hard, because anything is hard, especially that you want to do well. There's no easy route. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, and that is just huge. Just kind of taking yourself out of the picture and looking at things from a bird's eye view. And I always like to look at myself, like I think, right, if I was my close friend, best friend right now, what would I say to her? And really just doing that often whenever you're having those days where you're doubting yourself, or you're just feeling like everything feels a little bit heavy and you're clouded. And I just think it can help you reframe things. If you would not say what you're saying to yourself to your best friend, to your boyfriend, to your partner, your girlfriend, don't say it to yourself. Like, just don't do it, because it's not helpful either. Seventh step is build trust with yourself and track honest growth. I really learned this, and I've learned it the hard way. So I started journaling back in 2020, but I did mainly gratitude journaling. And with my journaling at the time, I feel like I only ever did kind of positive stuff, and I don't know whether I did it with enough like meaning and depth. I kind of like would write, say some days if I did a gratitude journal, I would just list things, but would I really feel that in that moment? I think when I look back, probably not. Whereas I do it quite differently now. So I do journaling, but I also document the days and challenges that I've gone through and overcome, so that when you have those times when you're going through it and you're feeling like you're in the thick of something hard and heavy, and like life can be like that. Like, we have stuff that comes up and things don't go to plan. Like, that is just, it is life. It's really helpful to have your bank of evidence, which you've heard me talk about before in my discipline video, but basically documenting your challenges as much as your wins. Growth isn't always pretty. So say if I'm in the best shape of my life, I will document obviously being in the best shape of my life, or like what are my habits, but then I'll also document I still get bloated, I still have days where I have body image struggles, for example, but just having a log of things. So I use Notion to have my bank of evidence, which is where I'll input my wins, and then I also have my journal where I input days where I've struggled, what's really helped, so that on those lower days you can go back and think, right, what worked before, like what helped me get out of this place in my life, and you've got actual evidence, and you just kind of can build more self-trust from there and more confidence because you have stuff logged. I really am a big believer in revisiting your older journals as well, seeing what you've gone through, making sure you're not like biased in that sense, and having things documented, screenshots, pictures, writing stuff, just having that creates a lot more self-trust for the future. But yeah, these steps are super transformative and will definitely help you with romanticizing your life, creating more discipline across all areas. It really does have a domino effect into every single avenue of your life. Like, you will see things unfold. I also wanted to mention, if you're not already, I would love you to be a part of my Flowness Club, which is the most amazing community of women on a really similar path and journey. I host my challenges, which are workout programs and all around mindset. So at the moment we're doing the Lean and Aligned challenge, which is a daily act of flowness, which is where we document what we've done as our lean action, so like our body, how we've moved today, where we've shown up for ourselves, and then we also document the mindset work we're doing, and it just creates a lot of accountability, and I couldn't recommend it more if you wanted to create more accountability and also find your tribe of girlies who are on a similar wavelength to you. I also wanted to say thank you so much for being here. I hope this has been really helpful and you've enjoyed this one. Can't wait to see you in the next video.